Hi everybody, this is Bonnie Barker with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I want to show you how to make my Inisheer Sweater Wrap. This is a long stole with some beautiful fringe, and on the back side of the stole is what looks like a sweater. So that's why we call this a sweater wrap. Let me go ahead and show you some more pictures of that right here. This pattern is a part of my book, Contemporary Celtic Crochet, which was published back in 2014. So that was before we had video tutorials as common as they are now. So in addition to the Inisheer Wrap, which again is the cover of this book, I do have several other complete video tutorials that are also found, where the patterns are found inside this book. This book can be found in some bookstores if you can find a bookstore in your area. It's also available at Amazon.com. It's available from Penguin Random House, and you might even want to try other online locations. I also have it in my Etsy store if you're looking for a signed copy. Well, let me go ahead and show you what you're going to need. For this project, I'm going to be using the Paint Box Yarns Simply Aran, and this is 100% acrylic. This is 3.5 ounces or 100 grams. Each of these balls of yarn has 201 yards or 184 meter. And just to let you know, I'm not using the originally sourced yarn for this project because it is no longer available. I'm also recommending that you have a size I or 9 or 5.50 millimeter crochet hook, a yarn needle, and a pair of sharp scissors handy. To begin, we're going to start with a slip knot and a starting chain of 223 chains. All right, so now that we have our 223 chains, and just to be absolutely clear, we are making the stole or the long portion of the sweater wrap first. Now, for row 1, we're going to work in the chain, and we're going to work in the second chain from the hook, and we're going to work a single crochet in that stitch and in each chain all the way across. At the end of the row, you should have a total of 222 single crochets. All right, I wanted to show you what I have after completing row 1, and just wanted to communicate a little bit. This is a little bit curly at the moment. I don't want that to worry you if it's just a little bit. I'm going to recommend that if you know that you are very tight in your crocheting of the foundation chain, it might be better if you go back, upsize your hook to maybe a size J, and try again, because if it's super tight, then that's going to be a problem later on. But generally, if you crocheted your starting chain with just a normal to looser tension, you should be fine. I didn't really concentrate on making mine particularly loose. I just used regular tension and it should be fine. And like I said, you're going to get a little bit of curl after that first row, but the second and third rows that we work should take most of that out. Now, to begin row 2, we're going to work what's called the low front ridge, and this is the first row of the low front ridge. So we're going to go ahead and chain 1. We're going to skip the first stitch and then the second stitch, and that's also what is meant by in the next stitch. It generally means that you skip the first stitch, and we're just going to work a slip stitch just in that one loop. Do that again. Slip stitch. We're not wrapping anything. We're just putting the hook into that front loop, pull the yarn through, pull the yarn through. Now this is another stitch that can tend to be very tight. If you know that you're very tight on these kind of stitches, you might want to consider a larger hook, maybe one size from the gauge hook. But if not, then just go with it. And you'll find that after you complete this row, that a lot of the curl is going to come out of the row. All right, so go ahead and work that all the way across, and I'll show you how the row ends. After finishing row 2, I just wanted to show you just how well this has straightened out already. Now we're going to do the last couple of slip stitches, and it does say to slip stitch in the turning chain, which is kind of optional, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now we're going to chain and turn, or turn and chain, however, and I want you to look for that single crochet from row 1, because we're still going to be working in this for row 3. So row 3 is the second row of the low front ridge, and so what we're going to do is working only in the single crochets. We're not going to work in the turning chain again. We're going to work single crochets in each of those remaining loops all the way across. And again, you should still have the same stitch count, 222. And just incidentally, when you're reading patterns, if you don't see a change or the stitch count at the end of the row, it's because it has not changed. Okay, so one more time, you can see, find the single crochet, and that loop is right there. So we're going to work those single crochets all the way across, and this is what is happening. You're forming this texture right here, which is actually quite lovely, and it's going to frame the next stitch that we do quite well. So, and this, by the way, is the front side, and the side, the row that we're looking at now, we have the back side facing us. So rows that are of the even number rows will be the front side facing, and the odd number rows will have the back side facing us. So go ahead and finish row 3. This is what you should have after completing 3 rows. This is with the back side facing and the front side facing. You should have a nice little ridge there. Now for rows 4 and 5, we're going to be working the cable stitch. It's not difficult, but it does have a series of stitching that you do in order. So I'm going to go ahead and take this slowly. We're going to chain 1 for the turning chain, and starting in that very first stitch, we're going to work a single crochet. Then we're going to chain 3. We're going to skip 2 stitches in the row, 1, 2, and in the third stitch, we're going to work another single crochet. So that's what you have so far. Now we're going to turn to have the back side facing us, and we're going to work in the 3 chains, and we're just going to work alongside, and we're going to work single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and in that single crochet we're going to work a slip stitch. Now we're going to turn again to have the front side facing us, and then working in those 2 stitches that we skipped, we're going to work single crochets, 1, 2. I'm going to do this a couple more times for you. So now we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches that have not been worked in, 1, 2, and then that third, we're going to work a single crochet. Turn, and working only in the chains, we're going to work single crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Slip stitch in the next single crochet, and then turn again to have the front side facing, and then you may want to pull this down in front so that you can see those 2 single crochets, and we work single crochets in those 2 stitches that were skipped. Let's do this again. Chain 3, skip the next 2 stitches on the row, single crochet in the next stitch. Then we turn to work in the chains, and again I'm just working on one side of the V. See the V in the stitch in the chain. We're just working on one side. There's absolutely no reason to work in the back bump in this situation. Single crochet 1, 2, 3, and then a slip stitch in that next single crochet, turn, and if you need to pull this back to see those 2 stitches that we skipped initially, single crochet, single crochet. Now, as you can see, this is getting all twisted every time I turn and turn and turn. Let me show you another way so that as this gets larger, because we're going to be revisiting this stitch more for this project. You're going to see this again. I'll show you how you can do this. 1, 2, 3. We're doing the stitching the same. Skip 2, single crochet in that next stitch. Okay, we're turning. We're actually turning clockwise for the right-handed version anyway. Single crochet in each of those chains. 1, 2, 3. Slip stitch in the next stitch. Now, instead of turning clockwise again, what you can do is take your yarn, bring it around the hook like that, and then turn counterclockwise and you're back so that you're not twisting everything up. And pull this cable down to reveal those 2 stitches we skipped, and we work single crochets in those 2 stitches, and you create this beautiful cable. It's going to be even nicer looking once we finish the following row. But go ahead and work this across, and you should have 2 stitches at the end. Just work 2 single crochets, 1 in each of those last 2 stitches at the end, and then I'll show you the next row. At the end of row 4, we work 2 single crochets. At the end of this row, you should have a total of 73 cables made plus 2 additional stitches. Okay, so now we're going to turn for row 5. I'm going to chain 1. We're going to single crochet in those first 2 stitches, which are not behind the cables. Now, working behind each of these cables, we're going to work 2 single crochets in that next single crochet, and then 1 in the next. You may need to pull back on the cable a little bit to see that stitch, and we put 1 there. So the next section, or the next stitch, we're going to work 2 single crochets in the next stitch, and then pulling back on that cable, 1 single crochet there. And again, 2 single crochets in the next space, or a single crochet, and 1 in the next. So basically, you are going to be working 3 single crochets behind each of these cables as you work across, and you can see that it really does help to set the cables apart even better. So go ahead and work that all the way across. At the end of row 5, we're going to work a single crochet in the very first single crochet, which is kind of been used already, but just it's right here. So right there at the end. So your stitch count should still be 222 stitches after this row. Now for rows 6 and 7, it's actually going to be a repeat of rows 2 and 3 with the low front ridge. I'll go ahead and get you started on this, but I'll let you finish the 2 rows. So we're going to skip that first stitch, working in the front loop only. We work slip stitches all the way across the row, just like we did before. At the end of the row, we will work a slip stitch in the turning chain, chain 1, turn, and then we work in the remaining loops right here, of course on the other end, but we're going to work in the remaining loops, and we work single crochets all the way across, working only in the single crochets. So go ahead and work rows 6 and 7. This is what you should have after completing 7 rows. Now for rows 8 and 9, we're going to be working the shadow box. We're going to start with a chain 2. The chain 2 does not count as a double crochet. We're going to work double crochets in the first 2 stitches. After that, we're going to prepare for a treble crochet. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches and just working in the top loops. We're going to treble in the next 2 stitches. Now this is the part that kind of forms the shadow box, and when we do that is we're going to work behind these 2 stitches and we're going to work in these 2. So we're going to come behind these 2. We're going to work, or you can even just pull those down into front. Work a treble in that first stitch that we skipped and in the second stitch that we skipped. Now we're going to skip 2 more stitches, 1, 2, treble crochet in that next stitch and in the next. So we're doing 2 stitches. Now we're going to do something a little different. Working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to treble in this stitch and in this stitch. And then the second stitch. And then we work double crochets in the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. Let's pause and take a look. So you should make this giant V, which is actually the bottom half of the shadow box. Now what we're going to do is repeat what we did here with the trebles and then followed by the 2 double crochets. We're going to do that repeatedly across the row. I'll do this with you one more time. This is the repeat. Skip 2 stitches, treble crochet in the next 2 stitches, working behind those 2 trebles, we're going to treble crochet in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. After that, we skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we treble crochet in the next 2 stitches. And now working in front of those 2 stitches, we treble crochet in the 2 skipped stitches. Double crochet in the next 2 stitches, and that is your repeat. What I highly recommend you do is after you complete a repeat of what we're doing across the row, make sure that the stitches look the same and you have the giant V on the bottom. It's very easy to just repeat what you did here. Again, here, how do I know this? Well, I may or may not have done that many times. So just definitely be sure to do a visual quick check and that you're doing the 2 double crochets in between those shadow box foundations. This is what you should have after completing row number 8, and you should have ended with just those 2 double crochets worked into the last 2 stitches. Let's go ahead and turn for row number 9. This is the second part of the shadow box. We're going to chain 2. We're going to double crochet in each of those double crochets. And this is very similar to what we did the last row. We're going to skip 2 stitches and we're going to treble crochet in the next 2 stitches, working behind these 2 stitches, we're going to treble crochet into the 2 stitches that we skipped. So actually this is the same as what we did the last row, but I'll show you the effect of this in just a second. Skip 2 stitches, treble crochet into the next 2 stitches, and you do work the treble crochets into the treble crochets and the double crochets into the double crochets in this row. Working in front of those 2 stitches, we're going to treble crochet into those 2 stitches that we just skipped. And then double crochet 1 in each of those double crochets. Okay, so, and this is what it should look like on the back side. And when we turn to the front side, we see this beautiful shadow box that is formed. Okay, let me do that for you one more time. So this is the repeat. Skip 2 stitches, treble crochet in the next 2 stitches just by working into the top loops. These are not post stitches or anything like that. Working behind those 2 stitches, we treble crochet into the 2 stitches that we just skipped. And then we skip 2 stitches again, treble crochet into the next 2 stitches, working in front of those last 2 stitches, we treble crochet in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Again, just like we did in the last row. And then double crochet in the next 2 stitches. All right, so let's take a look at this again. This is what you have with the back side facing. You have like 2 X's, or X, a big X for each of these shadow boxes. But then when you look at the front side facing, again, beautiful shadow boxes formed. Across the row, you should have a total of 22 shadow boxes, and this row will end with just working double crochets in the last 2 stitches. So go ahead and work row 9. This is what you should have after completing 9 rows. This is the back side facing, and when you turn the front around, this is what we have. Now the next 2 rows are rows 10 and 11, and they're basically the same. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch across. We are not going to work in the turning chain, so do not work in the turning chain, but just 1 stitch in each stitch across. So again, that's for rows 10 and 11. So this is what you should have after completing the first 11 rows. Now for rows 12 through 17, we are going to repeat rows 2, which starts with the low front ridge, rows 2 through 5. So that would be the 2 rows of the low front ridge, the 2 rows of the cable stitch, and then repeat rows 2 and 3 again, which is the low front ridge. So basically this section, we're going to crochet again up here. So it's bordering the other side of the shadow box. If you need additional stitch support for how to do this, look at the bottom of the screen, and I'll put a time mark where row 2 begins again. So you're going to work rows 2 through 5 and then work 2 and 3 once more with the low front ridge. After you complete that, then we'll continue on to row 18, which is going to start a new stitch pattern. This is what you should have after completing 17 rows. Now for row 18, I'm going to deviate a little bit from the original directions in the book, and let me explain why. The book, while it's still probably my favorite book in crochet that I've been able to write so far, I have learned a few things in the past 11 years, and one of them is working the honeycomb stitch with front post treble crochets instead of the larger hook size and working front post double crochets. It's a lot easier to use the front post treble. So that's the main reason why I'm going to, again, deviate from this. The stitch counts, everything else is going to be the same as in the written pattern, I promise. It's just that you're not going to have to upsize your crochet hook. And you don't, that way you don't have to worry about changing back and forth as much. And yeah, and then we're just going to use front post trebles for when we're crossing the front and back crosses. And I'll show you that in just a second. So we're going to start with the chain 2 to begin row 18. And we're going to double crochet in the first 3 stitches. Okay, so this is going to look similar to the shadow box, but we're going to be working these as post stitches. So we're going to prepare our hook for a treble crochet, skip the next 2 stitches, and the 3rd and 4th, we're going to work our hook just around that single crochet. Yes, you can work front post stitches on single crochets. I do them a lot. Do that in 2 stitches. Now working behind these 2 stitches, we're going to come in from behind and we're going to work front post trebles here and here. So, and you can even just pull that down like we did for the shadow box if that is helpful. Once you locate where the stitch is going to go, and again, I use my fingers and my thumb of my non-dominant hand to help me find where this is. So if you come into the hole and I've located the stitch with my thumb and tall man finger, and I know that's the proper stitch right there, bring it around and complete the treble. Now we're going to skip 2 more stitches, 1, 2, and we're going to do that front post trebles in the next 2 stitches. Now this is going to be easier to do the second part. Working in front of these 2 stitches, we front post treble in those 2 stitches we skipped. And of course it's easier because we can see where we're going with this. And this is what we're going to do all the way across the row. Not the 3 stitches here, just these 8 stitches that we just worked. I'll go ahead and work this with you one more time, and I'll have a listing of stitch videos for the Aran Celtic stitches in the video description below should you need additional stitch support. Sometimes just seeing it done in different color yarn and at a different way, at a different pace, can sometimes be helpful. We're going to skip those next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and we're going to first work behind. So working behind those 2 stitches, we can locate them, come in back here, and then we see that stitch there. So we work front post trebles in these 2 stitches. And yes, this can be awkward at first, but once you get a little bit of muscle memory developed, if I can find the stitch, there we go. I was going too far down. Okay, but once you practice them a few times and get the idea, it really does become much easier. Skip these 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and working in front of those 2 stitches, we front post treble in those 2 stitches that were skipped. Remember, we're doing front post stitches where the hook goes around the stitch rather than just working in the front loops. So let's pause a minute And so one thing very important, just like we did with the shadow box down here, when you're working these, you need to make sure that these crossings form a giant V. So you need to, they need to go down, then up, down, then up. And do be sure that you check, you know, as you go across, that you're doing this, you know, in this motion so that this is consistent, because otherwise the honeycombs will not form. So go ahead and finish this row, and I will, or go ahead and work it to the end, and I will show you the last 3 or 4 stitches, because we are just going to work 3 double crochets in the last 3 stitches. This is what you should have at the end of row 18. You should have a total of 27 large V's like this, and do be sure to go over and give it a quick visual confirmation that they are going down and then up all the way across. Why do I say that twice in such a short period? Did I make this mistake? Absolutely I did. I was going right along. Fortunately, I only had to rip out about half a row, not an entire row. So it's really easy to do. But once you get this foundation laid, I think it's going to be a lot easier going forward. For row 19, we're going to chain 2. We're going to double crochet in those first 3 double crochets, and you're going to find this row much easier. Now all we're going to do for this row is we're going to work back post double crochets all the way across the post stitches, and then at the end of the row we're going to work 3 more double crochets, 1 in each of those stitches. So this is all we're going to do. We're going to work back post double crochets, 1, 2, and we're going to have 1 for each of these post stitches. So for every, you know, crossing, you're going to have a grouping of 4. So like here, where everywhere where these are crossed, make sure that you work 4 back post double crochets. The stitch count at the end of this row should be 222, should remain constant. Okay, this is from the back side and from the front side. So go ahead and work that all the way across. This is row 19. So at the end of row 19, I'm going to work double crochets, 1 each in those last 3 double crochets. Let's go ahead and turn. And this is what we have. So now for row 20, we are going to chain 2. We're going to double crochet 1 in each of the first 3 double crochets. Now we're ready to complete the honeycombs, and I think you'll find this easier to do because it's very visual. We're going to skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and you're going to find it easier to do the post stitches around taller post stitches as well, because the last time we worked the post stitches, it was for the row 18 was working them in single crochet. So now we're working them in fuller size stitches. Now working in front of those last 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. This is the opposite of what we did down on row 18, because this was the front cross here, but we're doing the front cross first, and then we will do that, follow that with a back cross. So now for the other side, we're going to skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working behind these 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in this stitch and then in this stitch. And again, you can pull that down in front if that helps you to see where you need to locate these stitches. And here's the second stitch. And then after we finish that, you see the shape of a honeycomb. And so we're going to work that all the way across the row. I'm going to go ahead and do this again. Skip 2, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. And working in front of these 2 stitches, we're going to work a front cross by working front post trebles in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. And skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working behind those 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we just skipped. Okay, let's pause again. And so now you can see 2 honeycombs completed. So go ahead and work this all the way across the row. At the end of row 20, we end by working double crochets in those last 3 stitches. Now before you go on to row 21, let's go ahead and be sure to verify that you have honeycombs and that everything is crossed properly. Okay, so I've gone ahead and turned. And I'm going to work row 21, which is actually the same as row 19 that we worked right down here. I'll just start that with you again. Chain 2, double crochet in the first 3 stitches. And then we're going to work back post double crochets over all of the post stitches, just like we did in row 19. Again, make sure that you work 4 of these back post double crochets over each time these cables are crossed. Okay, so go ahead and work row 21. This is what you should have after 21 rows. Now for rows 22 through 23, we are going to repeat the last 4 rows that we worked. We're going to repeat that a total of 3 additional times. So you're going to have 4 of these honeycombs stacked when we finish this section. So again, that's repeat rows 18, 19, 20, and 21 4 more times. If you need additional stitch help, please look across the bottom of your screen and I will put the time mark for row 18 so you can follow that on through as many times as you need. After you have repeated this section 3 additional times, then I will give you some more directions. I'll go ahead and hold up the beginning part again, and you can see these honeycombs, how they fill in, as we've crocheted 4. Let me go ahead and show you that. 4 sets. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 sets of honeycombs. And I will say something about the color. If you decide to work this in other colors, I know it's a little late to mention this now, but the lighter the color, the better. As you darken the color and get to really deep colors, it really is hard to see this surface texture. Now I want to give you a large assignment. For rows 34 through 49, we are going to repeat rows 2, which starts with row 1 of the low front ridge, through 17 once more. So again, rows 2 through 17 once more, and we're going to crochet that on this side so it will be symmetrical. If you need stitch support to do this section again, go ahead and look at the bottom of the screen, and I'll put a little time mark where you can go back to row 2 and do rows 2 through 17. After we finish that, we're going to do a perimeter round. So what you can do is look and find where the perimeter round starts, which will start as soon as I give you this assignment. But go ahead and complete those rows, then we'll do the perimeter round, and then we'll start working on the back. This is what you should have after completing that section. This is where we started down here. The honeycomb rows, and then that repeat of rows 2 through 17. Now we're going to work a perimeter round around the entire stole portion, and we're going to do this simply with single crochet. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch. After working single crochets all the way across, we're going to chain 2, and we're going to single crochet in that same space again. And then we're going to work single crochets evenly across the row ends. I'm not going to give you a stitch count here because your stitch count might vary slightly. The main thing is that this stitch count and the stitch count on the other end match and that they are the same. Just so, you know, for consistency's sake. But we just want to make sure the stitches are crocheted evenly across the bottom. You don't want them to be pulled tightly, and you don't want them to be wavy. Just whatever an even consistency looks like for you across those edges. Then again, we'll chain 2, turn 90 degrees, and then single crochet in that same space to make another chain 2 corner, and then work single crochets across the foundation chain. And then again, we will repeat that again, chain 2, make the corner, and then work again across the row ends, and then I'll show you the connection at the end. I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to have worked across the row ends, and I have a stitch count of approximately 53 stitches. Like I said before, if you have a different number, if it's slightly more or slightly few, that's okay as long as the edge looks even. Okay, so at the end of this perimeter round, we're going to chain 2, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that very first single crochet of the round, and I am going to fasten off. Found my pair of sharp scissors. Make sure you leave a nice long tail so that it's easy to weave in the ends. Now, if you do not want the backing, you just want a nice long stole, you can go ahead and skip forward in this video, and I'll show you how to add the fringe, the knotted fringe, to the ends of the stole. Okay, but we're going to go ahead now on to the sweater backing portion. This is going to be remarkably similar to what we've already done. We're going to start the backing with a slip knot and a starting chain of 55. Now for row 1, we are going to work single crochets by starting in the second chain from the hook, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch all the way across, and that will give us a total of 54 single crochets. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a larger assignment right now. Now, for rows 2 through 21, I'm going to have you repeat rows 2 through 21 of the stole portion. Look across the bottom of the screen. I'll put a time mark where row 2 begins. So for rows 2 through 21, we're actually going to repeat the same as the stole pattern. We're going to start with the rows of the low front ridge, the cables. You'll have 17 cables in the sample you'll be crocheting for the back. Low front ridge, again, the shadow box, and you'll have a total of 5 shadow boxes, low front ridge, cable, low front ridge, and then you will also begin working the honeycomb. This is what you should have after completing the first 21 rows. This is of the back portion. Now what we're going to do, we're going to repeat rows 18 through 21, that's the honeycomb portion, a total of 9 times more. So once we finish, we're going to have 10 honeycombs lined up here, or across, since this is going to be going this way across on the back. So go ahead and repeat rows 18 through 21 9 times more. And if you need stitch support, again, look at the bottom of the screen, and I'll put the time mark where row 18 begins. This is what you should have after completing 57 rows. So we have worked the honeycomb stitch until you have 10 honeycombs lined up, so we can count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now this is going to be rows 58 through 73. Again, we're going to repeat rows 2 through 17. If you, again, need stitch support, it's not a problem. Look across the bottom of the screen, and I'll put the time mark where you can re-watch that section of the video. So this is what you should have after completing 73 rows. It's quite wide to fit across the back section. Now we're going to work round 74, and we're going to turn at the end of 73, chain 1, and we're going to work 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way until we get to the corner. When we get to that last stitch, we're going to work a chain 1 and turn and a single crochet in that same stitch. And now along the row ends, we are going to work 90 stitches evenly across. And let me show you an easier way to do this. So in order to do this in a more efficient manner, what I would recommend doing is finding the center of this piece. And we know that there are 10 sets of honeycomb, so let's count 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so we know that this area here is the approximate center. So let's go ahead and put a stitch marker here marking the center. That way you don't have to work 90 stitches and find out, oh boy, I'm going to be a couple short over here and I'll have to redo it again. You only have to go to 45. Now, if you want to divide that up, I know 45 is not an even number, but it is close. We can even fold this in half and thereby, estimate, let's say right here, you fold it in half and estimate the center, between 45. We can put a marker right here. Okay, so we can perhaps work 23 stitches to here and then 22 stitches until we get to the other stitch marker, which is right here, and that would constitute 45. So this is just a suggestion. You don't have to do it this way, but I think you will find it helpful. I folded this one in half. Again, this is all an estimation. And let's go ahead and do that. It is very important, though, that you work 90 stitches across this end, because then we are going to connect it up to the stole after we finish this. So we work those 90 stitches. We do another corner with a chain 1, which would be, in this space, a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. We work evenly in each stitch across on the other end. We work another single crochet, chain 1, single crochet corner here, and then we work again 90 stitches evenly across this other end, and then I will show you the join and give you more instructions once we get to that point. After working that 90th stitch across the row ends, I've chained 1 and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to that very first stitch of the round and give it a chain and a tug, and I'm going to clip a generous strand so that will be easy for working in once we complete the project. Now we're going to connect the back portion to the stole. This is the long portion that I have in the light box right now. Now in the book it says to connect to the foundation row. It really doesn't matter which side you connect this to, honestly, because both sides are symmetrical. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to connect this to the very last row work, because there's going to be more flexibility there. Like I said, after 10 years of designing, sometimes you learn to do things just a little bit better with time. So the instructions say to skip the first 65 stitches. So I'm going to have a stitch marker handy. So 65, we're going to count 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way to 65. So I'm going to go ahead and find that right now. So I've counted 65 stitches, and I'm going to put a stitch marker in stitch number 66 because that's where we are going to be joining. So I'm going to go ahead and get the back portion. So notice that I have the front side, the texture facing me. This is the stole. And now with the back portion, I'm going to flip it so that the front side is facing the front side. Okay. And what we're going to do, this is a lot of fabric in here. Okay, so what we're going to do is join this stitch together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find that chain 1 space, which is right here. So now that I've put my hook into the chain 1 space, and let's go ahead and we're also going to stick the hook through those 2 loops of the stole portion. And let's go ahead and form a slip knot, just like so. Again, make sure you have the front sides facing because this is going to be on the back side. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to join with a chain or slip knot. And then we are just going to work slip stitches, working through both sets of loops. Slip, stitch, slip, stitch, etc. all the way until you get to the corner of the back piece. So I'm going to go ahead and I will do that now. The last stitch that you work the slip stitch in is that chain 1 corner. After that, I'm going to give it a chain and a tug, and we're going to go ahead and clip a generous strand so that we can hide that loose end easily. And make sure as you crochet this across that the chain, or the slip stitch rather, is not too tight, but there should be some flexibility here. Okay, so if you tend to crochet your slip stitches extremely tight, you may want to just bump up to a larger size hook to kind of counter that. So now for the bottom ribbing, this is across the back. This is the lower left corner. And we are going to join with a slip stitch in that chain 1 space. Okay. Just go ahead and give that a nice tug. We're not going to work in this stitch. This is just going to be the joining chain. And then we're going to chain 11 stitches. Okay, so now we have 11 chains, and the way we're going to work this ribbing is starting in the second chain from the hook. We're going to single crochet in each chain across until we get to the body of the back section. Just one single crochet, and I'm just working along the side of the chain. Remember, we're just going to work 10 single crochets. That first is just a join. So now in the first stitch, we're going to work a slip stitch. And then in the next stitch, a slip stitch, and then a chain 1. And then we're going to turn to work in the back loop only of the single crochets. Now, keep in mind you have a chain, a slip stitch, and a slip stitch. Don't work in those. We're only going to work in the back loop of those single crochets, and there will be 10 of them. So if it helps you to just count the stitches, and I do recommend you do that at first, count to 10 each time. That way the ribbing won't get kind of wonky looking. If you miss a stitch here or there, add one, take one out. You don't want to do that. Try to make this look as even as you possibly can. And this is 9. And the last one is right here. We're going to chain 1, turn again, or what we could do is bring the hook around, but you want to now work in the back loop. Okay, after that chain 1, we're going to work in the back loop of those 10 single crochets again, and we're going to do this all the way across the bottom of this back section. So I'm going to go ahead and count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And again, that was a slip stitch, so we don't work in that. Now in the next, I'm working on the perimeter round at the bottom. We work a slip stitch, and then we work another slip stitch in the next stitch. Chain 1, turn, and we do it again. Again, starting in those single crochets, which are way over here. So remember, there's a slip stitch here, and a chain. So 1, 2, 3. It's really the 4th stitch that begins those single crochets going the other way. So again, 10 single crochets. So let me go ahead and I'll do this one more time with you so that hopefully you have a clear view of what's going on here. 8, 9, 10, chain 1, turn. You can turn the whole thing around, which can get messy, but what I like to do is actually bring the yarn back around this way. That way I don't have to turn the entire project again and again and again. And working in the back loop only, we work those 10 single crochets. And then this is 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then back on the perimeter round on the back of the section there, slip stitch in that next stitch, and then slip stitch in the very next stitch. Chain 1, turn, and again, starting in the single crochets only, we just continue working the ribbing. So we're just going to continue to work this along the back side, and this is what it should look like. Isn't that lovely? So go ahead and finish up those ribbing rows. I'm working the last row of this ribbing, and I'm going to join it right here at that chain 1 corner with the slip stitch. Give it a little tight pull and a chain. And I'm going to trim a generous strand. So let's go ahead and take a look at the ribbing. This is at the back of the sweater. All right, so now we need to finish the tassels at the end of the stole. So in order to cut the fringe evenly, first of all, I'm going to use a book, which it measures about 11.5, and when you add the ends, you do get 12 inches. So by wrapping the yarn around this, I'm going to get my 24-inch strands. So let me show you what I'm going to do. So what I've done is I've wrapped this yarn around the book 60 times. As I wrap it with a normal tension. I'm not pulling these really tight, and they're not super loose. So once I've finished wrapping these, okay, this is for one end, so 12 times 5, I believe, is 60. So this will be for one end, and then I'm just going to cut them with a pair of sharp scissors. Just like that. So I have the strands for one size. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again, and then I will have all the strands made, and I will show you how to attach these. And just for the record, yes, each of these strands are 24 inches long. And if you don't have a book this size, you can always use a piece of cardboard or something else. It can be even a little bit longer. It really doesn't matter, as long as it's at least 12 inches. So now let me show you how to attach these. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach 12 tassels evenly across each of these bottoms of the stole, or ends of the stole. Okay, I like to get these strands even, just like this. Smooth it out, and then find the halfway point by lining up the ends, generally like this. Okay, so now I have the halfway point up here. Okay, so I'm going to take the hook. I'm going to put one in that. It's actually a chain 2 space. Could have been a chain 1, or chain 2 space. And come up from the bottom. Let me show you again. So I have the front side facing this way. Take the hook from behind and bring it up. All the loops on the hook, pull them through. All the loops over the hook, and then pull these through. Just like that. So go ahead and work 12 across and make sure that you space them evenly. And the strategy for doing that, I would definitely place one on the other corner after having attached all of the tassels, all 12 of them, each of them with 5 strands each, to the bottom. Now it's time to knot the fringe. Now, if your fringe is extremely curly, maybe it came to the end of the skein of yarn and you need to straighten it out, there's a real easy way to do that. You can just take steam, like a handheld steamer, and you can just use that to steam it out. You can even use the steam from an iron, but be careful, do not iron the acrylic, it will melt. But if you steam it, it will steam it very straight. So now to start with the very first tassel, we're going to use all 10 strands of this tassel, and then we're going to divide this tassel in half. So we're going to take 5 strands, okay, in half. We're going to take these 2, and this is the way I like to wrap these together. We're going to tie them in a knot like this and try to do them all the same way, okay? So I'm doing this gently. I'm going to pull this gently. I'm going to try to manipulate this so that it kind of comes in the middle. Okay, and obviously this knot's going to be bigger because of all the additional strands. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, so, and this is approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches. That's a good distance here. So you can just kind of eyeball this. You don't have to measure it with a, measuring tool. All right, so now we're going to take 5 strands of the next tassel and the 5 strands that were remaining of the tassel that we just tied. And again, if we just wrap them around like this, and then pull the ends through that hole. Again, eyeballing it, and you're going to want to compare to what you've already done here. And pull that a little bit to the right. Okay, that looks pretty good. Looks similar to what we've done here. And so I'll do this one more time, and we're going to just go down the line doing it this way. Let me do this 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 strands of the next tassel, and the remaining 5 strands of the one that we just completed. Wrap around just like that, and then pull them on through, and just don't pull the knot super tight until you know about where it's going to be. Okay, just pull that down just a tiny bit more. And what's really nice about this is if you don't like the way it looks, just take it out and try it again. I mean, we can definitely do do-overs on this. So go ahead and do this all the way across. And when you get to the last one, You're going to have 5 strands remaining, and then you just combine it with all the strands of that final tassel. Okay, and then after you do that, what we're going to do, okay, we're going to straighten these out as best we can. And where did my scissors go? Here they are. And we're going to take the scissors and we're going to just trim this evenly. Just trim it so that the tassel is even. Okay, that just trims it up and makes it look really nice. So go ahead and finish that fringe. And if you haven't already, you're going to need to also go back and hide all the loose ends. And that's where your yarn needle is going to come in very handy. So go ahead and finish the fringe, hide the loose ends, and then we're going to be finished. Well, I hope you enjoyed making the Inisheer Sweater Wrap with me today. If you did, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to comment below. God bless. Bye-bye.